Welcome to NACo's County Countdown. I'm Mark Ritacco, NACo's Chief Government Affairs Officer, running through the top issues that are important to counties as intergovernmental partners. First up, counties are calling for an end to the federal government shutdown. The federal government shutdown is now in its third week, and in a statement last week, NACo called on the President and Congress to act swiftly to reopen the government and restore the reliable federal partnership counties depend on. Continuous, predictable federal funding is crucial for counties as intergovernmental partners. While county governments generate over 2/3 of our own revenue to provide services to residents, counties also receive $62 billion in intergovernmental revenue from the federal government. From ensuring our residents' day-to-day safety, to undertaking infrastructure projects, responding to and recovering from disasters, administering federal programs for vulnerable populations, and managing air, road, and rail and transit, county responsibilities often depend on federal, state, and local resources and collaboration. The ongoing government shutdown threatens to disrupt the consistent, reliable flow of resources and the important relationships we maintain with federal officials on the ground. Second, the U.S. Senate has advanced the bipartisan Road to Housing Act. On October 9th, the Road to Housing Act cleared the Senate as a floor amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act, moving this comprehensive housing reform package one step closer to becoming law. The bill strengthens several key programs counties use to address housing challenges. It reauthorizes the Home Investment Partnership Program with increased flexibility and permanently authorizes CDBG disaster recovery, giving counties consistent housing aid after disasters without waiting for ad hoc relief. The legislation also reforms the Agricultural Department's Rural Housing Services Program to preserve affordable housing in rural communities and creates new competitive grants to support local zoning reforms that increase housing supply. There is one complexity concerning to some counties, however. The bill ties CDBG allocations to new construction rates, which could penalize counties below the median housing growth rate with a 10% funding cut. The bill now moves to the House for consideration. Next, the Senate has also passed the Second Chance Reauthorization Act. This reauthorization extends funding for programs that help formerly incarcerated individuals successfully integrate into communities. Counties are major stakeholders in reentry. We spend $107 billion annually on criminal justice, and more than 1/3 of Second Chance Act grants from 2008 have gone to county governments. These grants fund employment assistance, substance abuse and mental health treatment, housing support, and mentorship programs for adults and juveniles returning to communities from jails or prisons. The reauthorization expands eligible uses to include supportive and transitional housing services and advances substance use disorder treatment, including peer recovery and overdose prevention. Successful reentry reduces recidivism, improves public safety, and generates significant cost savings for county taxpayers. The bill now heads to the House. Next up, NACo outlines priorities for surface transportation. As Congress works on surface transportation reauthorization, NACo is making the case for stronger federal-county partnerships. Counties own 44% of public roads and 38% of bridges, yet county-owned infrastructure is twice as likely to be in poor condition as state-owned infrastructure. In August, NACo submitted detailed recommendations to the Department of Transportation. NACo's priorities include addressing rural road safety, where nearly 50% of roadway fatalities occur despite rural areas being home to only 1/5 of all Americans. And we're calling for comprehensive rail safety legislation and opposing proposals to increase truck weights without corresponding infrastructure funding. Relatedly, the Safe Streets for All Reauthorization Act will provide $5 billion annually for counties to implement roadway safety improvements. Since 2021, this program has supported safety efforts in over 1,600 communities nationwide. Counties are also advocating for expanded Bridge Formula program funding targeted to bridges in poor condition, retention of discretionary grant programs, and permitting reforms that accelerate project delivery without cutting out local consultation. Counties invest over $146 billion in infrastructure, and as Congress works to pass the next surface transportation bill, NACo is making sure this federal policy reflects local concerns. And finally, disaster response and recovery reform. As we've covered before, on September 3rd, the bipartisan FEMA Act passed out of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, moving comprehensive FEMA reform one step closer to reality. This legislation represents years of county advocacy and incorporates many NACo recommendations. The bill would fundamentally transform how counties access disaster funding. The centerpiece is converting public assistance from reimbursement to grants. Counties would receive disaster funds within 30 days of approval instead of waiting months or years for reimbursement. The bill also requires states to include at least one pre-approved mitigation project per county in their plans and treats counties the same as states under procurement regulations for faster purchasing. The latest update is that NACo's Intergovernmental Disaster Reform Task Force is in Washington, D.C. next week, meeting with members of Congress to communicate the importance of this legislation. That's all for this week. Thanks so much for watching, and visit NACo.org for all the latest information and resources.